My name is Lana Blackwell. I'm 30 years old, and I'm the director of a survival skills training company. People see me now, confident, calm, leading groups into the wild, and they assume I grew up loving the outdoors. They think my parents took me on wholesome camping trips and taught me to pitch tents and roast marshmallows. They're wrong. I didn't choose this life because nature felt like home. I chose it because, once upon a time, the wilderness was the only thing that didn't lie to me. That day was a scorching summer afternoon, the kind that makes the air above the dirt shimmer like it's breathing. Sunlight stabbed through the trees, striping the ground in harsh, hot lines. Insects hummed in the thick silence of the campground, and the scent of dry pine needles clung to everything. My parents, Richard and Diane, had announced a family weekend away. That alone was suspicious. We weren't the kind of family that did trips. We were the kind of family that did lessons. My older sister, Emily, and I sat beside a pile of luggage, the only car in a near-empty campground lot. No other families setting up barbecues, no kids running around with glow sticks, just us, surrounded by dense forest and a quiet that felt wrong. I watched my parents move around the campsite like they were following a script. Tents up, cooler down, bags lined up in a neat row. If there's one thing I knew, it was this. My parents never did anything just to make us happy. There was always an agenda, a test, a preparation for life, as they like to call it. We had lunch, if you could call it that. Cold sandwiches, bottled water. No jokes, no stories. Just the four of us sitting on folding chairs as the wind scraped through the trees. But the strangest part? They were nice. No lectures about me being lazy. No sharp comments when I paused to stretch my back. Just calm. Too calm. Emily glanced at me once across the folding table. In that split second, her eyes said everything her mouth didn't. Something's off. My dad leaned back in his camp chair, stretching like he was relaxing into a Sunday afternoon. "Lana," he said, voice easy, almost gentle, "go gather some firewood. We'll have a campfire tonight." I glanced around. The sky was a hard, bright blue. It would be hours before sunset. "Now?" I asked. Emily's gaze flickered to me again, the concern a little more obvious this time, but she stayed silent. She always did. She had learned the hard way that speaking up only made the lessons worse. My mom chimed in. "It's not far," she said, too softly, too sweetly. "Just follow that trail and come back quickly. We'll start getting dinner ready." Her tone slid over my skin like oil. This sudden warmth didn't belong to her. Not really. But in our house, refusing a task was never an option. There were no boundaries. "No, I don't feel comfortable." There was only obedience or punishment. So I stood up, brushed the dust from my jeans, and grabbed the small hatchet my dad had tossed next to the cooler for firewood. I followed the narrow trail leading into the woods. At first, it seemed simple. The trees closed in, the sounds of the campground fading behind me. Dry branches were harder to find than I expected. Most of the wood was either too green or soft with rot. But I kept going, hunting for anything that would catch fire easily. Still, this weight in my chest grew heavier with every step. A vague, nameless restlessness. Why did they want me out here alone? Why today? Why like this? I checked my phone. Almost no signal. One flickering bar. Typical. "Get the wood," I muttered to myself. "Get back. Don't overthink." 15 minutes turned to 30. By the time I had a reasonable armful of branches, my shirt was sticking to my back with sweat, and the sun had shifted just enough to cast longer shadows between the trees. I turned around, retraced my steps, and walked back toward the campsite. When I stepped out of the tree line, the first thing that hit me was the silence. The second was the emptiness. The tent was gone. The cooler was gone. The bags were gone. The car was gone. The campsite was scrubbed clean, like we'd never been there at all. I froze. The firewood slipped from my arms and scattered across the dry ground. "No," I whispered. My heart hammered so hard in my chest I could hear blood in my ears. There weren't even tire tracks. No stray napkin. No forgotten bottle cap. Just the circle of flattened grass where the tent had been. And the rock where we'd eaten lunch. On that rock lay a single piece of paper, curled slightly at the edges from the heat. I walked toward it on unsteady legs. For a moment, it felt like I was outside my own body, watching some other girl in a red t-shirt and dusty sneakers cross the clearing. My hand shook as I picked it up. Their handwriting stared back at me, messy and impatient, like they'd scribbled it in a hurry. "Find your way home. This is your lesson." I read it once, then twice, then a third time. The words didn't change. The meaning did. At first I thought, it had to be a prank. They'd just moved the car, maybe shifted to another spot. Maybe they were hiding nearby, watching, waiting for me to panic. Dad, I called out, my voice too loud in the empty space. Mom? Emily? Only the wind answered, rustling through the trees. Somewhere a bird shrieked and then went quiet. The campground was practically deserted. No distant laughter, no engines, no radios playing. Just me and that note. Panic crawled up my spine like cold water. I grabbed my phone and dialed my mom. Call failed. I stared at the screen. No bars, or rather, one weak bar trying its best not to disappear. Come on, I whispered. I moved toward the trail that led back to the main road, holding my phone up like a beacon, watching the signal flicker in and out. I walked and walked. 10 minutes. 15. The sun burned the back of my neck. Sweat trickled along my spine. I tried again. Call failed. You left me here, I muttered, the truth finally settling in my chest like a stone. You actually left me here. By the time I hit 2 miles, my signal finally stabilized. My hands were shaking as I called my mother again. This time she picked up on the third ring. Lana, she said, as if I'd interrupted her in the middle of a meeting. I exhaled sharply, anger punching through the fear. Stop messing around, I snapped. Come back and get me. Now. Her voice stayed infuriatingly calm. I'm not joking, Lana. Find your way back. This is what's best for you. I stopped walking. Best for me, I choked out. You abandoned me in the middle of nowhere with no food, no water, no car, and you think this is best for me? She sighed, that same tired, condescending sound I'd heard my whole life. Don't be dramatic. You're 18. You want to be an adult? Here's your chance. Life won't always hold your hand. Moms! The line went dead. I lowered the phone and saw the signal vanish again. That was the moment something inside me cracked. Not like glass, more like a chain snapping, one link at a time. Whatever part of me still hoped that someday they might love me more than their lessons died on that road. After that call, I knew 2 things. 1, they weren't coming back. 2, I still had to get out before nightfall. Shadows were starting to stretch across the dirt as I dialed 911. The first attempt failed. The second failed. I kept walking, heart slamming against my ribs, staring at my phone like I could will it into working. On the 4th try, the screen stayed lit. 911, what's your emergency? I exhaled so hard it almost sounded like a sob. My parents abandoned me at a remote campsite, I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. I'm alone. I can't get back. There was a pause on the other end, that professional disbelief. Can you give me your exact location? Are you injured? I'm near the main trail by the entrance to Bear Creek Campground. I swallowed. The nearest town is, 10 miles? Maybe more. I'm not injured, but I have no food, no water, and it's going to get dark. Your name? Lana Blackwell. Okay, Lana, the dispatcher said, voice softening just a fraction. I'm sending a park patrol unit to your location. Stay put if you can. Keep your phone with you. If anything changes, call us back. Got it, I whispered. Thank you. When the call ended, the silence rushed back in. I stood by the side of that dusty road, hugging myself, listening to the distant hum of insects and the rush of blood in my ears. I wasn't just waiting to be rescued. I was waiting for my life to change. I don't know how long it took before I heard the crunch of tires on gravel. Time stretched and folded, every minute feeling like 10. The sun had dipped lower, turning the treetops gold when a black SUV finally pulled into view. 2 officers stepped out, one older, with deep lines etched around his eyes, the other younger, shoulders stiff in his uniform. Lana Blackwell? The older one asked, scanning the area like he expected something to jump out at us. Yes, my voice came out tight. That's me. He looked me over. Are you injured? I shook my head. No, just stranded. My parents drove off and left me there. They left a note. I held out the crumpled paper. The younger officer read it, his brow furrowing. Is this some kind of training thing? I let out a short, humorless laugh. They call it preparing me for life. I call it abandonment. The officers exchanged a look. The older one sighed. All right, he said. We're taking you back to the station. You can call someone you trust. We'll also be contacting your parents. For the first time that day, I felt something like relief. Not safety, not yet. Just the faint sense that someone in the world saw this for what it was. 30 minutes later, I sat at a small table in the police station, a styrofoam cup of untouched coffee in front of me. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. The air smelled like old paper and disinfectant. I shouldn't have been there, but my parents chose this, not me. As soon as I'd arrived, I'd called Uncle Jack, the only adult who had ever dared to tell my parents they were going too far, the only one who'd looked at me like a person instead of a project. While I waited for him, another officer was on the phone with my parents. 2 hours later, they walked in. Richard and Diane didn't look worried. No frantic eyes, no shaking hands, no tears. If anything, they looked annoyed, like a meeting had run long and ruined their schedule. Uncle Jack came in right behind them, jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscles tick in his cheek. The officer at the desk cleared his throat. "Are you the parents of Lana Blackwell?" My father crossed his arms. "That's right. Is there a problem?" "The problem," the officer said, glancing down at the report, "is that your daughter called 911 after being left alone at a remote campsite. According to her statement, you drove off without informing her. Is that correct?" My mother sighed, arms crossing defensively. "Yes, that's correct. But she's 18. We don't see this as abandonment. We were teaching her a real-life lesson." The words hit me harder than the heat had. Uncle Jack's head snapped toward them. "Nothing wrong?" he repeated, voice rising. "Richard, you left your daughter in the woods like a reckless idiot. Do you even understand what boundaries are?" My mother's eyes flashed. "Stay out of this, Jack. This isn't your business." He laughed once, bitter and sharp. "Not my business? I've been warning you for years. You think parenting means dumping your kid in the wilderness and telling her to survive? This isn't the military. She's not your recruit." My father folded his arms tighter, his voice going cold. "She's 18. She can handle herself. We did nothing wrong." The officer leaned forward, fingers laced together. "You're right about one thing, Richard," he said. His gaze shifted to my father like a weight. "Lana is 18, and that means you no longer get to decide for her." The room went very, very still. My parents stared at him like they'd heard him wrong. Like the concept that I had a choice, my own choice, simply didn't compute. Uncle Jack turned to me, his voice softer now. "Lana," he said, "you can come home with me. You don't have to go back." I met his eyes and, for the first time that day, something like safety brushed against my ribs. Before I could answer, my mother shrieked, "No, she is our daughter. She's coming home with us." The officer's tone sharpened. "No, Diane. As I just said, Lana is 18. That means the choice is hers." Silence. I pushed my chair back. The legs scraped against the floor, loud in the small room. I didn't look at the officer. I didn't look at the coffee. I looked only at my parents, the people who had given me life, then weaponized it against me. Without a word, I walked past them and headed toward the door where Uncle Jack waited. I heard my mother's breath hitch. I felt my father's stare on the back of my neck. At the doorway, I paused and turned around. "Richard, Diane." I didn't call them Mom or Dad. "From the moment you left me in that forest, you can consider your daughter dead." My voice was calm, too calm, every word sharp enough to cut. My mother's mouth opened and closed, searching for something to say. Nothing came out. My father's face stayed hard and expressionless, but I saw the flicker in his eyes, the shock of losing control for the first time in his life. I turned away. Uncle Jack's hand landed gently on my shoulder, guiding me out of the station and into the night air. That was the last time I walked beside them as their daughter. I didn't know it yet, but it was also the first step toward becoming the woman who would one day be accused, publicly, of abandoning them. I didn't sleep much that night. Uncle Jack's house was quiet in a way my parents' home had never been. No ticking clock timed to my failures. No footsteps pacing the hallway waiting for me to slip up. Just the muffled hum of the fridge, the faint creak of old pipes, and the distant sound of cars on some far-off road. I lay on the guest bed, staring at the ceiling fan slicing slow, lazy circles above me, and every time I closed my eyes, I saw that rock in the campground again. "Find your way home. This is your lesson." They didn't even bother with my name. At some point, exhaustion dragged me under. When I woke up, the house smelled like coffee and toast. I padded into the small kitchen, still wearing the oversized t-shirt Jack had found for me. He sat at the table with a newspaper, glasses low on his nose, a half-eaten slice of toast on his plate. "Morning," he said, like this was the most normal thing in the world. Just his niece crashing a little too long and leaving a forest abandonment incident in the past. "Morning," I replied, voice rough. He studied me for a second, then nodded toward the counter. "Coffee's there. Help yourself." No questions, no interrogation, no lecture about drama or overreacting, just options. I poured myself a cup. The first sip hit my empty stomach like a small shock. For a moment, I felt almost steady. Then someone pounded on the front door. The sound sliced through the quiet like an axe. My grip tightened around the mug. I didn't have to look. I knew. Jack's jaw clenched. He set his newspaper down carefully, like he was giving himself a second to decide how angry he was allowed to be. "Stay here," he said. I didn't move. I didn't argue. I just wrapped my hands around the warm ceramic and watched as he walked down the short hallway and opened the door. Even from the kitchen, I heard my father's voice. "Jack, open the door. We need to talk to Lana." His tone was sharp, impatient. Not a father desperate to make sure his daughter was safe. A man annoyed someone had dared interrupt his plan. Jack glanced back toward the kitchen. Our eyes met. His expression asked a question. "Do you want to see them?" I shook my head. It was tiny, but he saw it. He stepped forward, blocking the doorway with his body. "She doesn't want to see you," he said. My mother didn't even wait a beat. "She is our daughter," she snapped. "She belongs at home with us." Belongs. Like a piece of furniture or a pet. Jack didn't move. His voice dropped to that dangerous, quiet register I'd only heard once before, when he'd argued with my father at a Christmas dinner that ended in slammed doors and icy silence. "You still have the nerve to use that word," he said. "Daughter. Home." They argued on the porch. I couldn't make out every word, but I heard enough. "It was just a lesson, Jack. She's being dramatic. You're poisoning her against us." And then Jack, cutting through their excuses like a blade. "The moment you left Lana alone in that forest, without food, water, or a way out," he said, "is the moment it stopped being just your family business. She had to call 911 to save herself. That's not parenting. That's negligence." Silence. Then my mother's voice, brittle. "We'll talk to her when she comes to her senses." The footsteps retreated. A car door slammed. Another. The engine turned over, growing fainter as they drove away, for the second time. Only this time, I'd watched them go from a distance, standing in a kitchen that smelled like coffee instead of pine needles. Jack returned, exhaling slowly. "They're gone," he said. "For now." "For now?" I echoed, managing a weak smile. He shrugged, pulling out the chair across from me. "Your parents don't give up control easily, but they don't decide anything anymore. You do." Those words, "you do," lodged in my chest. I didn't say it out loud, but in that moment, I believed him more than I believed myself. The knock on the door had done something else too. It had shaken a box in my mind I'd been trying to keep shut. Memories spilled out like old home movies. No sound, just vivid scenes I hadn't asked to replay. I remembered being 10 years old, hand in my mother's as we walked through a crowded supermarket. One blink, one breath, and her hand slipped away. I turned to look at a row of brightly colored cereal boxes, and when I turned back, she was gone. At first, I thought she'd just stepped around to the next aisle. I wandered, calling softly, "Mom?" No answer. The crowd swallowed me. Adults brushed past, carts rattling, wheels squeaking. My chest tightened. I checked end caps, frozen food aisles, the produce section. 15 minutes dragged by. My throat burned. Tears blurred the labels. When I finally found her, she was standing near the checkout, arms crossed, watching me. "You found your way," she said as I ran up to her, shaking. "Good. Now you know how to take care of yourself." No hug, no apology, just a lesson. I remembered being 12, hunched over math homework, numbers swimming on the page. Emily leaned over, quietly explaining the steps, drawing a little diagram in the margin. I felt like I could breathe again, until my father walked in. "No one helps you with your homework," he barked. "If you can't figure it out alone, you deserve to fail." He took Emily's notebook, tore out the page she'd written on, and sent her to her room. Then he sat me at the dining table with no textbooks, no guidance, just a blank sheet of paper and the expectation I'd somehow decode it all by myself. The clock crawled toward 2 a.m. My eyes burned. The numbers blurred into shapes. He didn't care. It was a lesson. I remembered being 16, waking up drenched in sweat, my head pounding, body shaking with fever. "Mom," I croaked, standing in her doorway. I don't feel good. Can I stay home today?" She didn't even look up from her laptop. "Life doesn't stop because you don't feel well," she said. "Get dressed. You're going to school." So I went. By noon, I couldn't hold my head up. I collapsed onto my desk, the room spinning. The school nurse called my mother. She arrived angry. Not worried, angry. "You embarrass me," she hissed in the car. "You made it sound like I don't take care of my kids." I stared out the window, forehead pressed to the glass, and realized she wasn't afraid I'd been seriously sick. She was afraid she looked bad. The forest wasn't a one-time mistake. It was the grand finale of a twisted training program I'd been enrolled in since birth. Prepare for life, survive on your own, don't rely on anyone. Except they'd forgotten one thing. If you teach someone intensely enough that they don't need anyone, they eventually realize they don't need you either. 2 weeks after the campsite, Jack slid an envelope across his kitchen table. It wasn't from him, it was from the university. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. My hands shook as I unfolded the letter. Dear Ms. Blackwell, we are pleased to offer you admission to the University of California, Berkeley Business Administration program. I read it 3 times to make sure I'd understood. Each time, the words sank deeper. I set the letter down, exhaled a breath I didn't know I'd been holding, and went to the living room. Jack was there, fixing an old radio, brow furrowed as he tightened a tiny screw. I got in, I said. He looked up. His eyes searched my face as if he was trying to gauge whether this was good news or something that would break me. Then, slowly, the corner of his mouth lifted. Good, he said. Pack up your things. I'll help you move into the dorm. No over-the-top hug, no dramatic speech. No, you'll make us so proud. Just simple, steady support. For me, that was more than enough. Move-in day at Berkeley wasn't like the videos I'd seen online. No mom hanging fairy lights over my bed. No dad carrying boxes and pretending not to cry. No family photo in front of a freshly made dorm room. Just me, a small suitcase, a backpack, and Uncle Jack carrying a box of mismatched kitchen supplies he insisted I might need in case the cafeteria food is garbage. We walked down the hallway together. Other parents fussed over their kids, smoothing bedspreads and stuffing mini fridges. I felt like an intruder in a movie I hadn't been cast in. We reached my room. It was small but clean. 2 beds, 2 desks, white walls, waiting for posters and photos I didn't have. I unpacked. Clothes in the closet, notebooks on the desk, 1 mug on the shelf. Jack didn't hover. He just sat on the edge of the bare mattress opposite mine, watching me with quiet, unspoken questions in his eyes. When I was done, he stood. I'll get out of your hair, he said. You'll do fine. That's it? I asked, half teasing, half hoping he'd give me some secret manual for surviving adulthood. He smirked. You don't need a speech, Lana. You just need a chance. He put a hand on my shoulder, squeezed it once, then left. I watched him walk down the hallway past all the other parents. For a second, a hot, sharp ache flared in my chest. Grief, maybe, for the kind of parents I'd never had, and never would. Then it cooled. Freedom came with a price. No financial support, no safety net. I had a low-interest student loan, a dorm room, and exactly enough in my account to cover a few weeks of groceries. Everything else I'd have to build myself. My alarm started going off at 5 in the morning. The campus coffee shop hired me for the early shift. I stood half awake behind the counter, making latte after latte, while the sky outside went from black to gray to blue. It was exhausting. My feet ached. My eyes burned in 8 a.m. lectures, but the routine kept me grounded. Work, class, work, study, sleep, repeat. And in between all of that, something else began. At first, it was just curiosity. That day in the forest had carved a permanent question into my brain. What if I had really been alone? So I started reading. Survival books, wilderness guides, articles about hikers who'd gotten lost and barely made it back. I watched documentaries about people stranded in deserts, jungles, mountains. Then I moved from watching to practicing. I learned how to start a fire without matches, how to purify water when there's no tap, how to signal for rescue when you have no phone. The more I learned, the more I realized something terrifying. Most people had no idea what to do if their world suddenly broke. One day between classes, I propped my old phone up on a stack of books in my dorm room and recorded a short video. Basic steps to follow if you ever get lost in the woods. No filter, no fancy intro, just me, speaking calmly into the camera, imagining 18-year-old Lana, standing alone on that forest road, wishing someone had told her what to do. I uploaded it and went back to studying. I had no idea that tapping post was the first step toward the life that would one day bring my parents back to my door, desperate, broke, and ready to pretend they'd never left me behind. By the end of my first year in college, something strange began happening. The survival videos I recorded in the quiet moments between work and class, people started finding them. At first, it was only a handful of views. Students, curious hikers, someone scrolling late at night. Then, one afternoon, midway through a shift at the cafe, I overheard a group of customers talking about a hiker who'd gone missing for 3 days before being rescued. Crazy he survived at all, one of them said. Most people wouldn't have. Another asked, did anyone online make a video about what to do if you're lost? My ears perked up. I didn't say anything. But when my shift ended, I checked my channel. One of my old videos, How to Survive If You Get Lost in the Woods, had exploded overnight. Thousands of views, hundreds of comments, people sharing their own stories, asking for advice, thanking me for breaking things down without fear-mongering. For the first time, I felt something new, purpose. Not the forced purpose my parents pushed onto me, not their obsession with teaching me to survive. This was mine. Something I built, something I chose, something no one could take credit for but me. I made more videos. How to find fresh water, how to orient yourself without a compass, what to do if you're trapped in your car during a storm, how to build a temporary shelter from debris. I filmed on my phone, edited on my old laptop, uploaded at 2 a.m. when the campus Wi-Fi was fastest, and people kept watching. Some left comments saying they felt safer just knowing the information. Others used my tips in real emergencies and came back to tell me they made it home. That part hit harder than I expected. The idea that a stranger, a real person, survived something terrifying because of something I shared. It was almost enough to rewrite the forest in my memory, to turn that trauma into something useful. Almost. By graduation, my channel had grown into a modest but fiercely loyal community, enough that I began offering small weekend workshops for students and local hikers. I charged almost nothing. I just liked teaching, real teaching, nothing like the brutal, dehumanizing lessons my parents used to inflict. Uncle Jack came to one of my early workshops. He watched from the sidelines with arms crossed, pretending to disapprove while smiling the whole time. "You're good at this," he said afterward. It wasn't a compliment, it was an observation. But it meant more to me than anything my parents had ever said. A year after graduating, I made the scariest decision of my life. I turned my side passion into a business. No investors, no safety net, just the leftover money from my campus cafe job, a small loan, and a relentless drive to never feel powerless again. I launched Blackwell Survival Training. Everything was on me. The website, I built it on my laptop. Marketing, I posted flyers at local trailheads. Workshops, I ran them solo in national parks, fields, and community centers. Gear, I bought the cheapest equipment on sale and repaired it when it broke. Sometimes only 2 people signed up, sometimes 10. No matter the number, I taught like their lives depended on it, because someone's life eventually would. And they did. Within a year, backpackers came, hikers came, corporate teams booked workshops for team building, though most of them learned they couldn't start a fire to save their lives. Parents brought their teenagers. Search and rescue volunteers asked to collaborate. By year 3, my company wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. I had employees, a real office, a training facility, brand partnerships, interview requests, a waiting list. Every day that I woke up and worked in the wilderness, teaching people how to handle fear instead of collapsing under it, I felt closer to the version of myself who had stood alone on that empty forest road, clutching a phone with 1 bar of signal. She had become me. But there was another part of my life growing during those years, too. Something more delicate, more unexpected. I met someone. He wasn't dramatic or wild or overly charming. He was steady. The kind of steady that felt almost unreal to someone like me. His name was Caleb. We met at a small outdoor gear expo where I was speaking about emergency preparedness. He worked for a hiking boot company and asked a question during the Q&A that wasn't about marketing or sponsorships, but about safety standards for inexperienced hikers. Afterward, he approached me, hands tucked into his jacket pockets, voice warm but soft, curious about my work, respectful about it. We exchanged numbers, went on a few quiet dates. He listened more than he spoke, and when he did speak, he chose his words carefully. He never pushed, never invaded, never demanded an explanation for the way I sometimes stiffened at sudden noises or scanned exits in crowded places. At one point early on, he asked gently, "Have you always been this alert?" I shrugged. "It's a long story." He smiled. "I can wait." I wasn't used to that. Someone waiting. Someone giving me space without treating it like a burden. So I let him stay. Slowly. Carefully. He became the first person I allowed into my life who wasn't connected to trauma, obligation, or survival. The irony? It was this kind of closeness my parents always claimed they wanted for me, but never gave me the stability to actually experience. I thought I was done with them. Truly. 10 years had passed since the forest. 10 years without a call. 10 years without a text. 10 years of silence. And then one morning in my apartment, while I was sipping coffee and scrolling through news on my laptop, my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen and froze. My mother's name, a name I hadn't seen since I was a teenager, a name that felt like a bruise pressed suddenly. I didn't answer. The phone buzzed again and again. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 42 missed calls. Then a text. Your father and I are in serious trouble. Please help us, Lana. Call us back as soon as you see this. I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I deleted it. Just like that. No emotion, no guilt, no hesitation. Around noon, my phone rang again. Emily. And unlike my parents, she didn't call unless it mattered. Are you free? She asked, voice tight. Let's meet at the usual spot. 30 minutes later, I walked into our quiet little corner cafe. Emily sat in our usual booth, hands wrapped around a steaming cup of tea, staring into nothing. When she looked up, her eyes were exhausted. What happened? I asked immediately. She took a shaky breath. It's Mom and Dad, she said. I nodded once. I figured. They tricked me. Her voice cracked, then steadied. They told me they were investing in something safe, something with good returns. They promised it would help me buy a house next year. My throat tightened. Emily! I believed them, she whispered. I gave them the money. She swallowed hard. They gambled it away, Lana. I leaned back, arms crossed, letting the truth sink like acid. And the mortgage? I asked softly. Her eyes flickered up in surprise. How did you— I know them, I said. I know what they do. Emily nodded, then lowered her voice even more. I overheard them talking, she said. They lost everything. The house. It's going into foreclosure. I didn't speak. Not yet. And then, she continued, eyes filling, they talked about you. I stiffened. They've been keeping tabs, she said, watching your videos, following your company's success. They said they were just waiting until you were rich enough. Rich enough. So that's what I was now, a resource. They're coming for you next, Emily whispered. Be careful. I breathed out slowly. Of course they were. Of course. The next morning, just as I stepped into my office, my receptionist stood up, pale. They're here, she murmured. Your parents. I inhaled once deeply, then exhaled. I should have told her to send them away. I should have turned around and walked back out. But something inside me hardened. No, I said, let them in. I wasn't running this time. They walked into my office like they owned the building, smiling like they expected a hug. My mother's voice was too bright. Lana, sweetheart, you look so different. My father nodded, face stiff with manufactured nostalgia. How long has it been? 10 years? I leaned back in my chair, arms crossed. 10, I confirmed. Why are you here? They hesitated only a second before dropping the act. We need help, my father said. Financial help. How much? I asked. $150,000, my mother answered quickly, to save the house. I stared at them, unblinking. And the gambling? I asked. The mortgage? The money you stole from Emily? Their faces tightened. Guilt, irritation, then something uglier. My father recovered first. If it weren't for us, he said, raising his chin, you wouldn't be where you are today. Leaving you in that forest made you strong. You should be grateful. Grateful. Something cold and final clicked into place inside me. I smiled. A calm, calculated smile. All right, I said softly. I'll help you. Their faces lit up instantly. But, I continued, voice flat, I have one condition. And the air in the room shifted. Hard. The same way it had the day they abandoned me without a warning. Only this time, I was the one holding the lesson. My mother's smile froze first. Her lips parted, still curled upward, but her eyes flickered, just slightly, like she'd felt a sudden drop in temperature. My father narrowed his gaze, suspicion replacing the fake warmth. What condition? He asked slowly. I kept my posture relaxed, hands folded neatly on the desk. Calm, almost serene, the same way my parents had looked at me that day in the forest, so sure they were in control. You need $150,000 to save the house, I said. Correct? My father nodded stiffly. And another $100,000 for retirement, I continued, to stabilize yourselves? They exchanged a glance, a hungry one. Yes, my mother said. That would be enough. I tilted my head, imitating their tone from that day long ago. I'll give you both the $250,000. Their shoulders sagged with relief. My mother even let out a shaky breath, her entire body softening. But I wasn't finished. If, I added quietly. My father stiffened again. If what? I let silence stretch for a full 3 seconds, just long enough for dread to seep in. Then I said it. I will abandon you in the forest. Their faces went blank. 3 days, I continued. I'll take you to Bear Creek Campground. Same spot. No food, no water, no car, no instructions. If you find your way out within 3 days, I'll transfer the money. For a heartbeat, the room didn't breathe. My mother's jaw dropped. Her eyes darted between me and my father, as if trying to determine whether this was a joke. My father's expression twisted into something ugly. "You," he sputtered, "you ungrateful little—" He slammed his palm against my desk, rattling the pens in their cup. "You think you can mock us like this? We are your parents." I leaned back in my chair, crossing my legs. "You left me there for a lesson," I said. "I'm just returning the curriculum." My mother shot to her feet so fast her chair scraped harshly against the floor. "This is sick," she screeched. "You're threatening us." "No," I replied calmly. "I'm offering you a deal, and you're free to refuse, just like I was free to walk that road alone 10 years ago." Their faces contorted with rage, full, unfiltered rage, stripped of pretense, stripped of manipulation. The exact faces they had once hidden behind false smiles. Now they showed me who they truly were. "Get out," my father growled. "We're leaving." I pressed a button on my desk phone. "Security," I said. "Please escort our guests out." 2 guards stepped in almost instantly. My parents were pushed toward the door despite their protests. "This isn't over," my mother screamed, heels scraping the floor. "You'll regret this, Lana. You'll regret turning your back on family." "Funny," I replied. "I remember you turning your back on me first." The guards pulled them out. The door clicked shut behind them. And just like that, silence. I stared at the empty doorway, my heartbeat steady, my mind sharp. It should have ended there. But I underestimated them. I forgot who taught me how cruel people can be. The next morning, I woke to my phone buzzing nonstop. At first, I ignored it. I sat on my couch, sipping my coffee, trying to start my day, until my security guard called. "Boss," he said, his voice unusually tense, "you might not want to come into the office today." "Why?" I asked. "There's a mob," he said. "Reporters, cameras, microphones. It's a circus outside. The media is after you." My stomach dropped, but not out of fear, out of recognition. "What did my parents do?" I murmured. Before he could answer, my assistant called. "Lana," she whispered shakily, "have you seen the video?" "What video?" "I just sent you the link. Watch it, now." I opened the message. A video loaded. And the moment I hit play, everything made sense. The clip was short. Just one sentence. My sentence. Me sitting behind my desk, looking cold and unfeeling as I said, "I will abandon you in the forest. If you survive for 3 days, I'll give you the money." Nothing before, nothing after, no context. No mention of the gambling. No mention of the mortgage. No mention of stealing from Emily. No mention of the forest from 10 years ago. No mention of their demands. No mention of the $250K offer. Just the line that made me look like a monster. Below the video was a tidal wave of outrage. "How heartless. This woman is sick. She wants to dump her elderly parents in the woods. Money made her evil. Ungrateful daughter." The internet had already chosen its villain. I sat back against my couch, the phone still in my hand. They didn't call me to reconcile. They didn't call me because they loved me. They called me because they had run out of money and victims. And when I refused to become their next scapegoat, they made me one anyway. My phone buzzed again. Uncle Jack. "Lana," he said, voice low and steadier than usual. "I saw the video. Tell me what you need." "I can handle it," I said. He sighed. "I know you can, but you don't have to handle it alone." I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. 1 minute after he hung up, my phone buzzed again. "Emily, meet me at your office," she said. 9:30, we're fixing this." Her voice wasn't shaky this time. It was angry, protective. And that was enough for me. I called my assistant. "Invite every reporter into the company's conference room," I said. She hesitated. "Lana, if this goes wrong, it could get worse." I glanced at the viral clip, at my parents' twisted narrative, at tens of thousands of comments calling me a monster. "Let them come," I said. "I'm not hiding." At 9:30 a.m., Emily and I walked into the conference room together. Dozens of reporters filled the seats, cameras pointed at my face, microphones lined up on the table. Whispers buzzed like flies. "She looks so cold. Does she regret it? What will she say?" Someone shouted a question, and another followed, triggering a cascade. "How could you abandon your parents? Do you have a response to the footage? Are the accusations true?" I raised one hand. Instant silence. Not because they respected me, but because they expected a meltdown, a dramatic denial, a desperate defense. Instead, I picked up a remote, and the big screen behind me lit up. Not their edited clip, the full footage. The raw, uncut video from my office cameras. Every second of the conversation. Them begging for money. Their gambling admissions. The mortgage disaster. Their attempt to justify abandoning me years ago. My calm offer. My explanation. Their explosion of anger. Everything. By the time the video ended, the room was silent. Not confused, not skeptical, stunned. I stepped forward. This, I said, is the truth. I didn't tremble. I didn't choke up. I didn't apologize. I never intended to abandon them, I continued. The 3-day challenge was a mirror, a reflection of what they once did to me. I let that sink in. They taught me that survival matters more than love, that pain builds character, that abandonment was a lesson. My voice hardened. I just wanted them to hear their philosophy spoken back to them, out loud, on equal terms. The reporters sat frozen, hands hovering over record buttons, unsure whether this was news or a confession or something else entirely. Emily stepped beside me. Her voice shook, but not from fear. They stole money from me, she said. They lied to my face. They gambled away everything. And they were planning to manipulate Lana next. She inhaled, eyes glossy but fierce. They weren't victims. They were predators of their own children. The room exploded, not with anger, but with realization. Pens scribbled, cameras rolled, microphones stretched forward. This was no longer a scandal. It was a revelation. That afternoon, headlines flipped. The same outlets that had crucified me now published retractions, exposés, and sympathy pieces. Truth revealed. Viral clip was manipulated. Parents betray daughter. Edit video to destroy her reputation. Survival coach's story leaves internet stunned. Sister speaks out. They used us. I didn't smile. I didn't feel satisfied. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt quiet, peaceful. My parents called. I blocked the numbers. They emailed. I deleted them. They showed up at the office. Security removed them. They tried again. Security called 911 as instructed. I wasn't their child anymore. I was their ending, and they were mine. A full year passed after the press conference. Quiet, orderly, almost suspiciously peaceful. No more surprise appearances, no more chaos outside my office, no more anonymous numbers calling late at night. Just life. My company kept thriving. Bookings doubled. New corporate contracts came in. My online presence grew faster than I ever expected. But it wasn't fame that mattered to me. It was something quieter, something I'd never really had. Stability. The kind of stability I had watched other people grow up with. The kind of stability my parents spent years teaching me I didn't deserve. One quiet afternoon, I found myself in my favorite corner of a small cafe downtown. Warm lighting, soft music, a couple of students tapping away on laptops, a world utterly unlike the one I'd crawled out of. I was halfway through my tea when my phone buzzed. Uncle Jack. He didn't call often. When he did, it was always for a reason. "Lana," he said gently, "do you want to hear news about your parents?" I stared at my reflection in the cafe window, unsure of what emotion should be on my face. I shrugged. "Sure." He sighed. Not a dramatic sigh, just weary, like he was bracing himself to say something I wouldn't react to. "They left town," he said. "Moved someplace far. No one knows where." I didn't speak. Jack continued, "I heard they're not doing well. Financially, emotionally." Another pause. "It's bad, Lana, really bad." Still, I said nothing. Not because I didn't care, and not because I wanted them to suffer, but because there was no emotion left inside me to give them. They had emptied that well long ago. They had taught me to rely on no one, to protect myself, to survive without help. And for the first time in my life, I realized something ironic. Their lesson worked, just not in the way they ever intended. That night, I went home to Caleb. He had cooked dinner, simple roasted chicken with vegetables, the kind of meal he quietly Googled how to do because he knew I liked things seasoned simply, nothing overwhelming. He didn't ask about the phone call. He never demanded details. He waited. We ate together, talked about our days, and afterward we sat on the couch in comfortable silence. His arm lay across the backrest, close enough to touch, but never holding me hostage. I leaned into him, just lightly, my shoulder brushing his. It still surprised me sometimes that I could be close to someone without bracing for impact. After a long stretch of quiet, Caleb finally broke the silence. "You're far away tonight," he said softly. I nodded. "Jack told me my parents left town. Things are bad for them." He watched me for a moment, thoughtful. "Does that change anything for you?" he asked. I shook my head. "It doesn't," I said, "not anymore." He didn't look relieved or disappointed or judgmental. He just nodded. "Good," he said quietly. "Then you're allowed to let it go." I leaned my head against his shoulder, and for the first time, letting go didn't feel like giving up. It felt like release. Weeks passed. Months passed. Seasons changed. Life moved forward without the constant shadow of their presence behind me. One morning, I stood in the middle of my training facility as a new batch of students arrived, parents with teenagers, a group of hikers, a retired couple wanting to learn wilderness navigation. I looked at them, nervous, hopeful, determined, and felt a strange warmth, because they were standing exactly where I once stood, afraid, uncertain, trying to figure out how to protect themselves in a world they didn't fully understand. Only this time, someone would guide them, someone would offer support, someone would actually teach without cruelty. And that someone was me. A woman they once abandoned had become a person dozens relied on. Not a student, not a dependent, not a pawn in someone else's lesson. A leader, a survivor, a teacher who didn't need to break people to help them grow. A year after the press conference, I uploaded a video to my channel. Not a survival tutorial, not a training announcement. A story. My story. Not every detail, not every wound. Just the truth, told my way. Not as a victim, not as a girl left in the woods, but as a woman who made it out and built a life with her own hands. The response was overwhelming. Thousands of messages, people sharing their trauma, people thanking me, people saying they felt seen. For the first time, I realized my survival wasn't just mine anymore. It was something I could lend to others. And so at the end of the video, I said what I'm about to say to you now. You've heard my story, now I want to hear yours. If you were in my position, if your parents abandoned you in the wilderness and tried to ruin your life years later, would you forgive them? Would you help them? Or would you walk away like I did? Tell me in the comments below. And if stories like this resonate with you, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you won't miss the next chapter. This is Lana Blackwell, and I'll see you in the next story. Goodbye.